Everyone thinks they'd survive slow-moving zombies because they shamble at walking speed and headshots end them. From the relentless pursuit that wears you down to the psychological breaking points that turn survivors into threats worse than the undead, here's why you can't survive Walking Dead walkers. Starting with the one advantage zombies have that nobody talks about: relentless pursuit. Walkers don't get tired, ever. You do. That's the entire problem right there, wrapped up in two simple facts. In Night of the Living Dead from 1968, the first modern zombie movie that defined everything we know about these creatures, survivors hole up in a farmhouse thinking they can wait it out. The zombies shamble toward the house, slow and clumsy, looking like regular people in everyday clothes except for the pale skin and dead eyes. They claw at the doors and windows with the persistence of someone trying to open a jar lid for 6 hours straight. The survivors fortify, they board up windows, they think they're smart, but here's what happens. The zombies don't leave. They don't get bored and wander off. They just keep coming, hour after hour, until the humans inside start making mistakes from exhaustion and fear. One slip, one moment of letting your guard down because you haven't slept in 2 days, and suddenly they're pouring through a window you didn't reinforce properly. The movie showed audiences that slow doesn't mean harmless. It means inevitable. The film introduced ghouls that looked like your neighbors, dressed in the suits and dresses they died in, now stained and torn. They ate human flesh on screen. A shocking choice for 1960s cinema that made people walk out of theaters. One scene shows a ghoul eating bugs off a tree because it's just compulsively drawn to consuming anything. These aren't strategic hunters. They're biological machines programmed to pursue and devour. The survivors debate. They fight among themselves about the best plan, and while they're busy being human and complicated, the ghouls stay simple and focused. By the end, almost everyone's dead. Not because the zombies outsmarted them, but because humans can't maintain perfect vigilance forever. But here's the thing. If one farmhouse could hold off ghouls for a night despite mistakes, why not find a better fortress? Keep that question in mind, because the answer isn't what you think. Overwhelming numbers. Dawn of the Dead from 1978 took the concept and scaled it up to nightmare proportions. The survivors flee to a shopping mall, this massive complex with supplies and strong walls. Perfect refuge, right? Wrong. The zombies, now showing blue-gray skin tones and more detailed decay makeup, swarm the area. They're attracted to the mall like moths to a flame because that's where they used to shop when they were alive. The movie shows hundreds of them pressing against the glass doors, a sea of undead faces with blank expressions. The survivors manage to clear the interior and lock it down, living like kings surrounded by stores full of everything they need. For a while, it works. They're safe, they have food, they even play around on the abandoned merchandise. Then, other humans show up, a biker gang, and the whole thing falls apart. Ash the gang breaks through the defenses to raid the supplies, and in doing so, they let the zombies flood back in. Suddenly, the mall goes from secure fortress to death trap. The zombies pour through every opening, not running, but walking with arms outstretched, moaning that low grinding sound that echoes through empty corridors. What makes it terrifying isn't any individual zombie, it's watching them fill every space, every hallway, every store, until there's simply no room left to hide. The survivors try to fight their way out, but there are just too many bodies blocking every path. One character gets bitten during the chaos. Another gets torn apart by the horde. The movie features the sweater zombie and other memorable undead characters with distinct looks, each one just another body adding to the mass. The film works as social satire, not in showing zombies mindlessly returning to the consumer temple they worshipped in life, but it also demonstrates the core problem with slow zombies. Fight one and you attract 10 more with the noise. Fight 10 and 100 show up. Pretty soon you're trapped in a building surrounded by thousands, and no amount of supplies helps when you can't leave without getting swarmed. The walls that protected you become your tomb. What happens when you try to study them instead of just hiding? Because some people thought understanding walkers might be the key to survival. They were wrong, but what they discovered makes everything worse. Infection mechanics. Day of the Dead from 1985 moves the action to an underground bunker where military personnel and scientists are trying to figure out how the zombie plague works. The walkers above ground keep shambling around while below, researchers dissect bodies and run experiments. Dr. Logan, nicknamed Frankenstein by the soldiers, attempts to domesticate a zombie named Bub. Bub's special. He shows signs of memory, recognizing a razor and remembering how to salute. The doctor thinks maybe intelligence survives death, that the undead can be trained. It's the closest anyone gets to a breakthrough in the entire franchise. The experiments reveal the harsh truth about infection. Get bitten, and you're done. Within hours, you develop fever, you deteriorate, you die, and then you come back as one of them. Amputation might work if you cut off the bitten limb immediately, but you need proper medical equipment and sterile conditions. In a bunker filled with tension and dwindling resources, those conditions don't exist. One soldier gets bitten and they try to save him, but he turns anyway, attacking his former comrades. The movie shows in graphic detail what happens during transformation. The sweating, the convulsions, the moment when the person you knew disappears and something else takes over their body. But infection isn't just from bites. Everyone's already infected. Die from any cause. Heart attack, accident, old age, and you reanimate unless your brain gets destroyed. That revelation changes everything. It means every human death creates a new threat. Your friend has a heart condition? Future zombie. Someone falls downstairs? Future zombie. Natural death doesn't exist anymore. There's only death that makes more walkers. The bunker survivors turn on each other, soldiers versus scientists, fighting over resources and control while the zombies wait patiently above ground. When the conflicts lead to deaths inside the facility, those bodies get up and create chaos from within. You can fortify against external threats all you want, but you can't fortify against your own mortality. Bub eventually shows emotion, mourning for Dr. Logan and using a pistol to shoot the soldier who killed him. It's a glimmer of retained humanity, but it doesn't change the fundamental problem. The vast majority of walkers are mindless flesh eaters, and the infection guarantees their numbers always grow while human numbers always shrink. So if infection turns everyone into walkers, why not just avoid getting bitten and die of old age somewhere safe? Because there's no such thing as safe when society collapses, and that's where the real horror lives. Societal breakdown. Shaun of the Dead from 2004 plays the apocalypse for comedy, but still captures how fast civilization crumbles. The movie follows Shaun, an average guy dealing with relationship problems when zombies start appearing in London. At first, people don't even notice. The undead shamble down streets, and everyone assumes they're drunk or on drugs. By the time society realizes what's happening, it's too late. Supply chains break immediately. Stores run out of food within days. Gas stations close. Power grids fail. The movie shows this through Shaun's attempts to save his loved ones, running through a city that's rapidly falling apart. The zombies themselves fill the streets in massive crowds, moaning and reaching for anything living. They're slow enough that Shaun and his friends can temporarily evade them by walking briskly, but there are so many that every route becomes a navigation puzzle. The group holes up in a pub called the Winchester, fortifying it with pool cues and furniture. The pub siege demonstrates another survival problem. Even if you find shelter, you need an exit strategy. They're surrounded, ammunition runs low, and the walkers just keep pressing against the building. The horde includes random zombies that look like everyday British citizens, and the movie even jokes about celebrity cameos in the undead crowds. One zombie is Shaun's former roommate Ed, who becomes a sentient zombie kept in the shed for playing video games. The film shows how human conflicts complicate survival. Shaun argues with his stepfather, his friend David questions every decision, and his girlfriend Liz loses faith in his leadership. While they're bickering about the plan, zombies are climbing through windows. The movie uses humor to highlight a serious point. Humans are their own worst enemies during catastrophes. We form groups, but then fracture over disagreements about who's in charge or which direction to go. Meanwhile, walkers have perfect unity because they only have one goal. No walker ever stopped mid-chase to argue about tactics. The epilogue reveals society adapting to coexist with zombies. Some get used for menial labor, others appear on game shows, and Shaun keeps Zombie Ed chained in his shed for entertainment. It's a dark comedy ending, but it acknowledges something real. The world doesn't end cleanly. It becomes something stranger and worse, where the living have to navigate around the shambling dead like permanent hazards. But Britain isn't America. A different place, different outbreak. What happens when the zombie plague hits a culture obsessed with apocalypse preparation? The answer is grimmer than you'd expect. American Decline. The Dead Don't Die from 2019 sets its zombie outbreak in a small American town called Centerville. The zombies rise due to polar fracking throwing Earth off its axis, an environmental disaster metaphor wrapped in horror. The undead emerge from graves speaking single words related to their past obsessions. Coffee zombie moans, coffee, guitar zombie mumbles about his instrument. They retain these tiny fragments of who they were while being completely driven by hunger. The movie presents them as ambling corpses with pale skin and hollow eyes, wandering the streets at night, attacking anyone they encounter. The police force, led by Chief Cliff Robertson, Ajan tries to maintain order as the dead multiply. They shoot zombies in the head, the only method that works, but every night brings more rising from the cemetery. The town's isolation means no outside help is coming. Resources deplete quickly, and panic spreads. The film plays out like watching society give up. Characters deliver deadpan dialogue about their impending doom while zombies tear apart victims in graphic scenes. A child zombie appears, showing that the outbreak doesn't discriminate by age. The horror comes from the characters' resignation. They know they can't win. They know this is how humanity ends, and they just go through the motions anyway. What makes this outbreak particularly hopeless is the environmental cause. You can't fix Earth's axis. You can't reverse polar fracking's effects. The dead will keep rising every single night forever. Some characters try to escape, but there's nowhere to go. The phenomenon is global. The movie ends with most of the cast dead and reanimated, joining the shambling hordes. It's apocalypse's inevitable conclusion rather than survivable crisis. The walkers here aren't even the main threat. They're symptoms of humanity's larger failure to respect natural systems. But symptoms or not, they still tear people apart with decayed hands and rotten teeth. Every outbreak follows patterns. Rural or urban, American or British, the result stays the same. But what about when walkers encounter specific vulnerable populations? Because the worst scenarios involve those who can't defend themselves. Children at risk. The Little Monsters from 2019 puts zombies in proximity to a kindergarten class on a field trip. The outbreak occurs at a petting zoo farm when infected Americans from a nearby military facility escape and spread into the area. Miss Caroline, the teacher, tries to protect her students, while zombies overrun the farm. The children are too young to understand what's happening, so she pretends it's a game. The undead follow the sound of music, drawn to her ukulele playing, shambling after the group with arms outstretched. The movie highlights the impossibility of protecting vulnerable populations during outbreak scenarios. Children can't run fast. They don't understand danger. They make noise constantly. Keeping a dozen kindergartners quiet and moving while zombies hunt them is an impossible task. Miss Caroline manages temporarily through quick thinking and luck, but it's unsustainable. One child wanders off and nearly gets bitten. Another starts crying and attracts walkers. The zombies themselves aren't described in detail, but function as standard, slow undead. Gray skin, shambling movement, kills through bites and scratches. Military intervention arrives, but it's too late to prevent casualties. The facility breach means the infection is already spreading beyond containment. The farm setting shows how rural areas offer no safety advantage. Fewer zombies, maybe, but also fewer resources and no reinforcements. Miss Caroline's heroism saves most of the kids, but the broader implication is clear. In a real outbreak, schools become death traps. Hospitals full of patients who can't evacuate become hives. Our nursing homes turn into slow-motion massacres. Any location with people who need assistance becomes impossible to defend because walkers are patient and caretakers are human. The infection spreads through scratches, too, not just bites, making every physical contact potentially fatal. One scratch from a walker's fingernail breaking skin and you're infected. You've got hours before fever takes you. Then, you're one of them. In a group with children, the ethical nightmare compounds. Do you abandon an infected child? Do you waste resources trying to save them? Do you mercy kill? The movie doesn't answer these questions because there are no good answers. Which brings us to the real killer in zombie outbreaks. Not the undead, the psychological weight of impossible choices, mental collapse. And the slow approach of walkers creates unique psychological torture. Fast zombies sprint at you and it's over quick. Terror than death. Slow zombies give you time to think about your situation, time to watch them shuffle closer, time to count how many are surrounding your position, time to realize you're going to die slowly, probably by being eaten alive while conscious. That waiting builds dread in ways sudden threats don't. Night of the Living Dead weaponizes this through pacing, showing characters watching through windows as ghouls slowly congregate outside. The characters argue, blame each other, make increasingly desperate plans. The stress fractures the group until they're fighting each other more than coordinating defense. Barbara, the female protagonist, goes catatonic from fear after watching zombies kill her brother. And she sits in shock while chaos unfolds around her, unable to process the horror. Other characters debate whether to hide in the cellar or stay upstairs, a disagreement that turns violent. Ben, the black protagonist, tries to maintain leadership, but faces constant challenges from Harry, another survivor who thinks he knows better. Their conflict culminates in physical fighting while ghouls break through the barricades. Harry's selfishness gets people killed. Ben's mistrust leads to fatal hesitation. Everyone's decision-making deteriorates under sustained stress. The movie ends with Ben surviving the night only to be shot by a rescue posse who mistakes him for a zombie. After everything he endured, after fighting off the undead for hours, a human kills him because of a split-second judgment call. That's the psychological thesis of walker outbreaks. The slow zombies aren't what destroy you. The prolonged stress, the moral dilemmas, the human conflicts, the crushing weight of trying to maintain humanity while surrounded by death, that's what breaks people. The walkers just finish what fear and exhaustion started. Dawn of the Dead explores this through the mall survivor's arc. Initially, they're thrilled with their fortress. They have everything they could want materially. But being surrounded by hundreds of zombies wears on them mentally. They start taking risks, making stupid decisions born from boredom and cabin fever. When the bikers attack, survivors make tactical errors because they're not thinking clearly anymore. Stress accumulates like radiation poisoning. Invisible, but deadly. You don't notice it degrading your judgment until you've already made the fatal mistake. Day of the Dead takes it further into outright madness. The bunker survivors are at each other's throats constantly. Soldiers threatening scientists. Scientists calling soldiers stupid brutes. The isolation combined with the knowledge that they're probably the last humans alive creates paranoia and aggression. Captain Rhodes becomes increasingly unhinged, threatening to execute people over minor disagreements. The stress of living underground with limited resources and unlimited zombies overhead breaks military discipline completely. When the bunker is breached and zombies flood in, people die as much from panic and friendly fire as from walker attacks. The mental toll explains why every zombie movie shows society collapsing completely within weeks. It's not that humans can't physically defeat slow zombies. We have guns, explosions, and fortifications. It's that we can't psychologically sustain the effort. We break under pressure. We turn on each other. We make fatal errors because our brains aren't designed for constant existential threat. Walkers exploit the weakness of human psychology simply by existing. And if mental stress doesn't kill you, the environment will, because choosing where to hide determines how you die. Location selection. Urban areas become death zones fast. Dawn of the Dead's mall demonstrates why. High population density means more zombies. Cities have millions of people who all turn when they die, creating oceans of undead that flood every street. The survivors navigate the mall's parking lot through thousands of walkers, driving vehicles into the crowd to clear paths. The sheer number makes escape nearly impossible. You can't sneak through a horde that dense. You can't fight that many even with automatic weapons. You'll run out of ammunition before they run out of bodies. The mall itself seems perfect with its supplies and security, but it's a trap. The moment you're surrounded, you can't leave without fighting through the horde. Noise from daily activities attracts more zombies. Breaking glass, gunfire, even loud conversations draw them. The building becomes a beacon broadcasting your location to every walker within hearing distance. The survivors can't use generators without creating noise. They can't drive vehicles without attracting attention. Every survival action that requires sound brings more undead to the perimeter. Rural settings offer different problems. Night of the Living Dead's farmhouse has fewer zombies nearby initially, but it's also isolated from help. No reinforcements are coming. You're on your own with whatever supplies you already have. The farmhouse provides some security through its wooden walls and limited entry points, but rural buildings aren't built to withstand sieges. The ghouls break through eventually because farmhouse construction doesn't include zombie-proof fortification. Rural areas also mean limited supplies nearby. Urban survivors can potentially raid stores and warehouses. Rural survivors have to travel distances between resources, each trip exposing them to walker attacks. The farmhouse group runs out of options quickly because there's nothing around them except fields and more approaching ghouls. Your distance from other survivors means no trading, no intelligence about safe zones, no collaborative defense. The Dead Don't Die shows small-town isolation turning deadly. Centerville has maybe a few thousand people, so fewer zombies than a city, but it also has minimal resources for fighting an outbreak. A couple of cops, no military presence, limited medical supplies. When zombies overrun the town, there's no defense infrastructure. The police station becomes a last-stand location, but it's not designed as a fortress. Windows break easily, doors aren't reinforced. The characters make their stand knowing they're doomed because the building can't hold. Islands seem like the obvious answer. Limited access points, surrounded by water that walkers theoretically can't cross. Survival of the Dead from 2009 explores this with an island community that's feuding over how to handle their undead. Turns out, even islands fail because you still need supplies from the mainland. You still have to deal with infected people already on the island. You still face human conflicts that create internal threats. And depending on the water depth and current, walkers might just walk along the ocean floor until they reach shore. They don't need to breathe. Every location has fatal flaws. Urban areas have too many zombies. Rural areas have too few resources. Islands trap you. Mountains are hard to farm. Bunkers run out of supplies. There's no perfect refuge because walker outbreaks don't allow for perfect solutions. Any place you choose to hide becomes your tomb eventually. But what if you don't hide? What if you try to fight back and reclaim territory? Because some people always think they can win through force. Failed militarization. Day of the Dead shows military response failing catastrophically. The bunker houses soldiers with weapons, ammunition, and training. They should be able to handle zombies. They're trained to kill enemy combatants, and walkers are slower than any human enemy. But the military mindset doesn't work against undead. Soldiers are trained to take and hold strategic positions. But there's no strategic position against zombies because they don't have supply lines to cut or command structures to decapitate. You can't negotiate with them or demoralize them into surrendering. The bunker soldiers waste ammunition shooting zombies that could be avoided. They treat it like a war when it's a survival situation requiring different tactics. Captain Rhodes insists on military hierarchy and authority, while that structure actively prevents flexible problem solving. When Dr. Logan proposes studying zombies to understand them, Rhodes sees it as weakness. When scientists suggest communication might be possible with specimens like Bub, Rhodes wants to just shoot everything that moves. The rigid military thinking can't adapt to a threat that breaks all conventional warfare rules. The soldiers also make the mistake of treating scientists as subordinates rather than essential personnel. They bully the researchers, threaten them, create a hostile environment that prevents collaboration. When you're in an underground bunker as possibly the last humans alive, forming teams and sharing knowledge is Survival 101. Instead, the soldiers hoard resources and assert dominance, fragmenting the group's effectiveness. Their military training becomes a liability because they apply irrelevant tactical frameworks to an unprecedented situation. Land of the Dead from 2005 shows what happens when military force builds a walled city. The survivors create Fiddler's Green, a fortified zone protected by rivers and barriers with soldiers patrolling the perimeter. They've reclaimed some territory and established a functioning society for the wealthy, while the poor live in slums outside the fortress. The military ventures out in armored vehicles to raid supplies, fighting through zombie hordes with machine guns and explosives. For a while it works. They maintain their territory and keep the undead at bay. Then the zombies evolve. A walker named Big Daddy shows intelligence, learning to use tools and organizing other zombies. He leads a horde across the river by walking along the bottom and breaches the city's defenses. All the military planning and fortification fails because it assumed walkers would stay mindless. The moment they adapt even slightly, static defenses become obsolete. The armored vehicles get overwhelmed, the walls get bypassed, and Fiddler's Green falls. Military might delays the inevitable, but can't prevent it. The fundamental problem is ammunition and resources. Militaries need supply chains for bullets, fuel, parts, and food. When society collapses, those chains break. The bunker in Day of the Dead runs low on everything. The city in Land of the Dead has to keep raiding for supplies, risking people on every mission. Eventually, you run out. Out of bullets, out of fuel, out of people willing to die for another supply run. Walkers don't run out. They don't need supplies. Every human death adds to their numbers, while every zombie death barely dents the horde. Military response fails for the same reason all organized resistance fails. It requires sustained resources and coordination against an enemy that requires neither. You can win battles, but you lose the war of attrition. And when the military falls, civilian survival becomes even more hopeless, which loops back to the core thesis. You can't survive walkers because every survival strategy has a fatal flaw. Compounding failures. Fortification traps you. Mobility exposes you. Hiding delays, death. Fighting wastes resources. Cooperation leads to betrayal. Isolation leads to madness. Every choice you make in a walker outbreak trades one danger for another without eliminating risk. Night of the Living Dead's survivors fortify and die when defenses fail. Dawn of the Dead's survivors hide and die when they can't escape. Day of the Dead survivors study and die when they turn on each other. The pattern repeats across every scenario because there's no right answer. The infection guarantees you can't rebuild population. Every death creates an enemy. You can't have children safely because pregnant women and infants are completely vulnerable. You can't treat the elderly or sick because they'll turn when they die naturally. Communities can't grow, they only shrink. Each loss is permanent, while walker numbers constantly increase. The math doesn't work. Even if you kill 1,000 zombies, more are being created from natural deaths everywhere. You're bailing water from a sinking ship with a teaspoon. Resource depletion ensures long-term survival is impossible. Canned food expires. Medicine degrades. Ammunition runs out. Crops need protection from walkers. Clean water requires infrastructure that breaks down. Gasoline goes bad after a year. Solar panels fail without maintenance. Everything you need to survive has a shelf life, or requires systems you can't maintain alone. Dawn of the Dead shows this through the mall. All those supplies seem infinite until you realize they're finite and irreplaceable. Once you eat all the canned food, there's no more. Once you fire all the bullets, there's no factory making more. Human nature prevents cooperation at scale. Small groups might work temporarily, but larger organizations always fracture. Resources create conflicts over distribution. Different survival philosophies clash. Some people want to hide, Others want to fight, others want to find a cure. These disagreements turn violent under stress. Every zombie movie includes scenes of humans killing each other because that's what happens when you put desperate people in competition for scarce resources. The zombies don't have to defeat you. They just have to apply enough pressure that you defeat yourself. The psychological toll breaks everyone eventually. You can be strong, capable, and smart, but months or years of constant vigilance will erode your sanity. You'll start making mistakes. You'll develop PTSD from watching friends die. You'll lose hope and make decisions like Barbara's catatonia or Rhodes's paranoia. The human mind isn't designed for endless apocalypse. We need safety and rest and normalcy. Walkers remove all three permanently. You exist in permanent crisis until crisis breaks you. Shaun of the Dead's epilogue shows the darkly realistic outcome. Society doesn't defeat zombies or get defeated by them. It adapts to coexist in a degraded state where the undead are just permanent hazards you navigate around. Zombies on game shows, zombies doing menial labor, zombies in your shed. It's survival, but not victory. It's humanity reduced to managing an infestation it can't eliminate, accepting a world that's permanently worse. That's probably the best case scenario, and it's still a nightmare. The evidence across every Walker film points to the same conclusion. Whether it's radiation from space, mysterious plague, or environmental disaster causing the outbreak, whether it's rural farmhouses or urban malls or military bunkers, whether the survivors are civilians or soldiers or scientists, the result is always civilizational collapse and mass death. Slow zombies create unsolvable problems. Their persistence overwhelms defenses. Their infection spreads faster than it can be contained. Their numbers grow while human numbers shrink. The psychological pressure breaks group cohesion. Resource scarcity makes long-term survival impossible. You can't win through violence because there are too many to kill. You can't win through hiding because you run out of supplies. You can't win through cooperation because humans turn on each other under pressure. You can't cure the infection because the infrastructure needed for medical research collapses. You can't escape because the outbreak is global. Every path leads to the same destination. You become one of them, or you die trying not to. The walkers in these films represent something fundamental about mortality and entropy, their death-given form, shambling forward with absolute certainty. You can delay them, evade them temporarily, but they never stop coming. They're the universe's heat death made visceral, slow, inevitable, unstoppable. Every moment you survive is just postponing the conclusion. The farmhouse falls, the mall falls, the bunker falls, the city falls. Everything falls because that's what walkers do. They don't conquer, they persist until everything else collapses from exhaustion. And that's why you can't survive them. Not because they're stronger or faster or smarter than you, because they don't need to be. They just need to keep existing while you slowly run out of ammunition, food, sanity, and allies. They embody the only certainty in life, that everything ends. Your fortifications will fail. Your supplies will deplete. Your mind will break. Your group will fracture. Your luck will run out. The walkers will still be there, shuffling forward, reaching out with decayed hands, waiting for the moment you make your final mistake. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the 7 levels of zombie weapons, click the video on the screen.